Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
All right. Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. Joining me today is Frank Giaoui, CEO of Optimalex, who combines AI, law, and economics to help organizations predict disputes, quantify risk, and navigate complex cross-border decisions with more clarity. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thank you, Tim, for having me today.
Okay. Why don't you explain a little bit more what that means to our listeners?
Well, to explain that, I should share my personal experience. About 15 years ago, I was a victim of an accident.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah. Well, it was not so good because I lost everything during this accident. And, very naively, I said, okay, I can recover something by, mediation, some kind of settlement. Nothing happened in settlement. So I went into a lawsuit, and I discovered at that time, I was not a lawyer. I discovered that damages, compensation, and law is made such that when damages are difficult to quantify, they can simply not be compensated. And so there is this high uncertainty when you go in court between the two parties. You flip the coin almost sometimes. And the statistic shows that most of the plaintiffs are not compensated at all because it's not so easy sometimes to demonstrate the damages and quantify it. But some of them, very rare, are overcompensated, really overcompensated. And this is very inefficient. At that time, I thought it was very inefficient economically. And so I said, okay, let me learn. I was doing cross-border mergers and acquisition, very different business, which I kept. And I went back to law school, and I developed this project, which became a PhD later on, and then a business. We incorporated in 2020 Optimalex.
Okay, right when COVID hit.
Exactly. We are fully remote, by the way. We still are fully remote.
Okay. So was that good timing or bad timing, or just didn't matter too much?
I think we were among the first to start, and I don't think personally there is good or bad timing. There is just length of timing. It's always a long process. So I think 2020 was not particularly a good timing, but not also bad. It was opportunistic. We had a team with very high caliber, talented people, both in the law side, on the economic side, on the engineering, data science, and then later on the medical and insurance side. So we essentially use that as a catalyst to create the company. And so today we use AI technologies, all kinds of technologies, machine learning, natural language processing, of course, Gen AI, to provide two things, mainly for insurance carriers, health providers, and lawyers. One is workflow automation, simply saving time on manual tasks. And the second is what we call predictive analytics decision support, which help you to take a decision on a consistent basis with more informed background, documents, and facts, and so hopefully have a better outcome.
Right. Okay. Let's take a step back for a second for a bigger picture before we dive into all the interesting aspects of AI and the legal analytics. You were doing mergers and acquisitions cross borders. Are you still doing that? Are you 100% into Optimalex?
That's a good question. Of course, many of my background, many of my publications and my deals were in cross-border M&A. So I'm still consultant on mergers and acquisition. And there is no direct link except one thing, which is the quantification. I have always been involved into quantitative side of the business and technology. So on both situation, cross-border M&A and the insurtech, it's quantitative and technology.
Okay, so that kind of fell naturally into your I say wheelhouse, but into your specialty of your lawsuit and You're like, okay, well, apparently there's a misconception that, oh yeah, I was wronged and now I'll be compensated. It's like not unless you prove damages, right? And trying to calculate that seems to be the bulk of Optimalex's focus. Is
Correct.
that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So what we do concretely, I mean, the core of our technology is to identify patterns. This is AI, right? You identify patterns with relevant data, consistent data, of course. And because we are trained lawyers, we know the good law in each particular jurisdiction. So we know what are the variables, or we call that features, which have a higher impact on the outcome. But we don't know necessarily intuitively the amount or the quantum. So we use those variables that we extract from many sources. I can discuss that later on. And we identify patterns for each case, for each jurisdiction, in each particular severity of casualty. And from there, the patterns can help reduce the uncertainty on any new claim. So now when you have a new claim, let's say you are a claim adjuster in an insurance carrier, you can, of course, rely on your own experience. You have 2, 3 similar claims in your mind. You may, if you are super well organized, go into your database or share with your colleagues. But here you have hundreds and thousands of similar claims all at once. And in the tip of your finger, in 3 seconds, you can run simulations. So this is the core of our technology. Around that, we have many, many other tools to automate workflow, to compare the performance of your lawyers, to see the portfolio evolution of your risk. We have many, many other tools.
Okay, so you're applying AI and quantitative models to legal disputes, and you're seeing things that traditional legal approaches are missing and faster.
Yeah, even before it becomes a legal dispute, hopefully we can avoid legal dispute, because this is where it becomes efficient. What if the two parties are basing their expectations on very objective, factual background? Then we reduce the uncertainty, and maybe this gap becomes this, and we can mediate and settle.
Sure.
This is really the objective, not necessarily only litigation. Of course, when it goes on litigation, we assist the litigation management of the insurance company, but we want to avoid the litigation if possible.
Sure, and reframing it and giving them a clearer picture of what the possible outcomes are is paramount, and that's great. How early can you realistically predict the outcome of a dispute?
That's a good question. So in the industry, there is what the verbiage is FNOL, first notification of loss. This is when not the accident happened. Let's say you are in a car accident. It's maybe 2 years after, when the plaintiff or the victim of the accident decided eventually to file a claim or possibly a lawsuit, which is already a little bit late. So they may appoint a lawyer, or they may do that by themselves, and this is the starting point. Before that point, the payer or the insurance company or the hospital, if it is a patient of a doctor, doesn't know much. Sometimes they have just a weak I would say information from the doctor, from witness, but sometimes they don't know anything. So that's the starting point. It depends. So the answer to your question, it depends really on the use cases. On motor vehicle accident, or what we call auto liability, it's on average 18 months, 2 years. This is the length of the cycle. But on more complex claims, let's say medical professional liability or attorney professional liability, this is on average 4 to 5 years. So and we have quantified, I have particularly in mind one example, which is we have quantified the lost earnings or the savings you could do if you reduce the cycle time by 1 day. Every day after a certain tipping point costs you $1,000. Because lawyers are involved, because people becomes greedy and angry. Of course, you have also just the time of processing, which is inefficient. And eventually, when it goes into a lawsuit, you never know. So it's very, very inefficient. You have so many people involved. You don't control anything, both on the plaintiff and on the defense side.
Okay. Okay. Just to clarify also something you said. So automotive stuff, that the cycle is usually 18, 24 months, something like that. What do you mean by that, by the cycle? That's like limitations or statute of where,
No,
or
the
is that just
statute
when
of
people
limitations.
normally
Yeah,
act?
statute of
Okay.
limitations are really jurisdiction based, depends of the
Okay.
state and the law. But the cycle, what we call the life cycle of a claim, from FNOL, the first notice of loss, until the resolution, the closing of the claim. It can be a settlement. On most cases, it is a settlement, or it can be a trial and then, of
Sure.
course, a court decision.
Okay, that's incredibly valuable stuff already. I think most people can see that this could have an incredible impact.
It's long, and the important part of it is this is just an average or median even, but it's more median than an average actually. The extremes are super high. Like you have a long tail of this business, which is most of the loss. Some cases can last 10 years, 10 years is sometimes seen. And of course, that costs a lot to all parties.
Sure. So when it comes to damages, why are they so inconsistently calculated?
Because they are not calculated. So that's the whole point.
Right.
It is mainly based on arts, much more than science, until recently for sure. And it's based on the bargaining power of each party. So if you are in a plaintiff-prone jurisdiction, let's say Cook County, Chicago, it's known in the legal industry to be very, very plaintiff-prone, and you are in a very difficult situation, independently of the severity of the damages, independently of your own injury, you know that you will be compensated high. And even higher if the defendant is not just an independent doctor, it could be a hospital. And then it's potential nuclear outcome, even sometimes a legal abuse. So the reason why it's not well calculated is because there is a high uncertainty. And when people are expecting too high on one side as a plaintiff, or maybe too low on the other side as a defendant, this goes to something which is not completely rational. And then who knows what happens in courts, right? So what we do is putting actual benchmark, comparing with very similar cases on a rational basis, and all parties can share the same information if they wish. When there are, doctors involved, doctors are scientists, or at least they have some background in sciences. They like to see the facts. They like to see figures. You can convince them that it is more reasonable to pay a little bit more as a defendant and to avoid the uncertainty, right? We have the benchmark. So that is putting science to art, essentially.
Okay. So that's a good approach. Where does AI improve decision making?
So depends what you call AI. So in our range of technologies, we have a long experience. Actually, we started in AI at that time with natural language processing. That's almost 15 years ago now. And then machine learning modeling. What I'm describing is really machine learning. But today, AI is generative AI, or very soon agentic AI. And so there are very low-hanging fruits. For instance, hospital medical records of any patient can be hundreds of pages, thousands of pages. And when you are an insurance, when you are a lawyer, and you need to summarize all that, you have the choice. Either you appoint an expert, a medical or paralegal expert, and it costs you, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, or you use generative AI and other, tools that we can combine, and it costs you nothing in a subscription. It costs you a marginal amount, and you save on average 10 hours for this medical chronology. So this is like the simplest use case of how AI can bring value. Of course, when you save the time, let's say you save 9 hours out of the 10 for this medical chronology, now you can invest your brain or your most valuable resources in your team
Sure.
to the actual resolution of the claim. And it doesn't cost you more, right? It's not even to fire people or to reduce the number of headcount, but to make them work on the high value task, not manual tasks.
Right. Is there any change in not just speed, but also reliability?
Yeah. So AI is not magic, okay? Like any intelligence, you need to train them. It's a learning process. So when you start, of course, we have our own internal models, which are calibrated to the market, but we need to take time with the client for them to understand how it works, sharing their own practice and making it accurate to their own track record. And not only to their track record of the past, but also to their expected track record of the future. One very important deception is to try to mimic the past. By just mimicking the past, you are not improving the situation. You are just replicating the past or situation. You want to improve the situation. So in order to improve the situation, we combine the internal data of our clients with our market benchmark that we have from other sources. And we combine the science of data with the human expertise. So this is where science and arts can play together. We don't replace the arts, we add science to the art.
Okay. Your accent is largely French. And I do you find it fascinating, the difference between civil law and case law here in the US?
Okay, so it's the
this is a can of worms, I think.
No. The story started in France. So the question is a good one. And I thought at that time that the law would be very different between France and the US for that matter. Of course, it's very different for many other matters. For this matter, it's not that different. And essentially, the court or the judge are left sovereign with their sovereign power, that's the legal word, to decide the amount. And so, uncertainty is the same. The only difference is, in general, in continental Europe, let's say, not only in France, or even in the UK, the amounts are much smaller. The legal abuse vague or the legal abuse practice did not yet invade continental Europe. But it will come soon.
You don't get $1 million because your coffee was too hot?
Yeah, exactly. That is a famous story, as you know. No, you don't get that, but it is coming. Anything that's happening in the US, for that matter, at least, will eventually happen. Except if the US, go on tort reform, and many jurisdictions, many states are on doing tort reforms to make it more reasonable, more predictable, to have some kind of ranges.
Okay. How have you seen AI be overhyped in a few different legal or insurance contexts? I mean, it's getting better all the time, but I was just wondering if people have misconceptions about that.
About AI?
Yeah, and how reliable or unreliable it can be.
Yeah. So there are two misconceptions about AI. One, we talked about, it's magic. It's not magic. It's just learning, etc. And so you need to work to make it accurate. The other misconception is horror. And of course, everyone has heard about horror stories of this lawyer who used AI for their brief. And unfortunately, the AI mentioned one case decision that was just invented, so-called hallucination, and the judge detected it, or someone at the judge detected it, and the lawyer was publicly blamed. That's terrible. There are some of those horror stories. I have to say two things. One is they are reducing a lot, and we never hear about the good stories. And so not only about law, but it's the same, in Phoenix, we have Waymo, right? Everyone has heard about the 2 or 3 cases where Waymo was stuck in the middle of the traffic light, etc.
Right.
Who have heard about the 300,000 or maybe now millions of rides that have happened very well?
Right.
So when you compare with the human reliability, it's much, much better.
Okay.
My personal judgment is we are now, it's not only my personal judgment, actually, it's facts also from research. We have reached a point where, in terms of simple accuracy, AI is much better than any expert on a consistent basis. What is not yet done is the interconnection of specialties. So if you have a case where you need a good lawyer and a good doctor and a good claim adjuster, maybe in that situation, human expert will be better. But the accuracy will overcome. It's already the case in many use cases. Will overcome the human accuracy.
Okay. Frank, so without specifics, what can you give sort of an example of where better and earlier analysis completely changed the outcome of a dispute?
Yes, I can give you multiple examples. I want to give you something that is a little bit illustrative or more images, with images. So there is this situation I have in mind where in one particular challenging case, the claim adjuster, so the insurance company, was appointing a lawyer with whom they have worked a lot. And of course, a relationship is good. You trust someone, so you appoint the lawyer. And it was on the path of going to trial. And then we brought dashboards, I would call them dashboard in general, to compare what other alternative lawyers would be available. And when we compared different use cases with trial or settlement, and this was the beginning of our discussion, we identified a couple of other lawyers which were much known for settlement. And we tried one of those lawyers as an additional lawyer, and the case was settled after 45 days. So it was going on trial. The trial lawyer, let's say the first one, was probably an excellent trial lawyer, so would be good in court, in pleading, in convincing a jury, etc., but with a high uncertainty of the outcome, because no one would, predict the outcome reasonably well. Now, when you have another kind of lawyer who is a negotiator, and you settle for sure with a fair value, of course, it's a substantial amount, but you save the uncertainty, the legal fees, and you save also the reputation, because a settlement is something that you don't disclose. So it's not out there.
Right, which is why I think a lot of my wife is a physician, and I hear stories of suits where the hospital settles and the physician's like, "No, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't want to settle." And they're like, "Too bad. It's just easier, cheaper, and
okay."
So, you want to talk? Okay, sure.
Both happens. So one part is exactly your story, which is convincing the doctors that even if they didn't do something wrong, like legally wrong, they were in the duty of care, in the standard medical standard of care. It is their own interest to settle, to consent to the settlement. Okay, it will cost, I don't know, 400,000, 500,000, but at least it reduces uncertainty. But on some other cases, it is good to go on trial when you know that first, there is absolutely no liability. Not only the doctors didn't do anything wrong, but the whole hospital system was supportive of it. You have expert witness, medical expert witness saying, yeah, this is absolutely the duty of care. Nothing was wrong. It's just bad luck, essentially. Mm-hmm. And you know that you are in a situation where you are, for instance, as an insurance company, very strong in this particular jurisdiction. It would not necessarily be your interest to settle, even if you reduce the uncertainty, because then you give a bad signal to the party, to the lawyer, and they talk to each other, of course. The signal is, we know that we have nothing wrong. Our doctor was perfectly fine, and we still settle. That's not a good signal for the next claim.
Right. Unfortunately, it feels like it's business as usual in some cases, depending upon. Yeah. Okay. So switching to more business aspect, for someone building or investing in a business, what is one shift they should think about in terms of risk, right? And that would immediately improve their outcomes.
So investing in which business, Tim?
In any business, right?
Any
Someone
business.
who's, yes.
For me, it is clearly the time. So, of course, we all know the exceptions of very fast, skyrocketing startup. They have invested minimal amount, and they take off very quickly for whatever reason. But these are really exception. 90% of the startups fail after 2 years, right? And 98 after 5 years. So I would say the number one criteria is the time management, to manage your own time, to manage your team's time, to manage your shareholders' time over a reasonable time period, over a reasonable life cycle of any project. And that is really not always easy, to be honest, because there are ups and downs. I mean, your podcast is Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, but you have prosperity, you have down, and then ups again. So for me, that's number one. And related to that is how to manage the team work, the dynamic of the team, how to make it 1 + 1 = 3. This is very important. It's related, by the way, of time. Sometimes teams do not succeed just because they are impatient. So that would be my main conclusion. But there is something else in your question. When you say, give me a lesson, my only lesson is there is no lesson except what you believe in. So I cannot count the number of people who told me, oh, your project is super interesting, but you will never succeed. Oh, yes, this is fascinating, but there is no data available. Yes, of course. But if you work a little bit more, if you are resilient, you can gather enough data, you can identify clients who are interested, and you can succeed. So the lessons is no lesson except what you believe.
Okay. Yeah, that's the confidence required as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't do anything.
Sure. But it's a big hurdle. It's in my sense not to be underappreciated.
I think you need to be a little bit crazy, to be honest. Unconscious or crazy. Unconscious is the best, because then you start, you don't know that it is very hard. You essentially don't have the advice of people saying you will not succeed. And then you realize by yourself, but at least you have started. Crazy is something different. You know that it is very hard. You know that it is very unlikely that you will succeed, and you still go on. Whichever is your choice is one of the two.
Right. That's a little bit of a theme I've had with some of my other guests too. I had somebody on the podcast, Bob McGuire, who has been very successful with his Life Biosciences company, and he said he didn't know he couldn't do it. He didn't ask people, because if he would have, right, they would have told him, oh no, you don't have the degrees, you don't know enough to do that, and yet he did it anyway because he didn't know he couldn't.
Exactly. I love those stories. By the way, it's not only in business; it can be in any field. You can apply that to a personal relationship, for art, for anything. Research.
There's a classic story. I forget where it was. It was the math problem where the guy came in late and he saw the problem written on the board, and he thought it was homework. So he went home and he solved it, and he came in, and the teacher had told them that these were unsolvable problems, that no one's been able to solve these in 100 years. And then he didn't know that they were unsolvable, so he did.
Exactly. So I think we learn at every age, and this is also the only main rule I gave to my two now grown-up sons, is you just decide what you want to do and go ahead for it. You are the only one to do it anyway.
All right. That's good advice. Some more good advice. Thank you, Frank. So if people would like to connect with you, learn more about Optimalex, where can they go? What should they do?
So I think the best way would be to connect to our LinkedIn page at optimalexsolutions.com is our webpage. And we have two LinkedIn, my personal profile, Frank Giaoui, with the name written here. or Optimalex webpage or a LinkedIn page. Sorry.
Okay. And there's I think you just had a webinar there. Is there a recording of that? People?
Yeah, of course, there is a recording. We have on our website and on our LinkedIn page multiple publications, webinar, podcast, intervention to conferences. So we share a lot. There is, of course, both some aspect of it, which is making our products exposed, but a lot of it is also just thought leadership that we share for free.
All right, excellent. A lot of great educational content. That sounds awesome.
Educational content, exactly. There is a series of video. There are a series of videos detailing what I was describing in a nutshell. Each and every step of claim management and how AI technologies can improve the process from the very early on. The early triage of claims, the assignment to the appropriate lawyer or the appropriate claim manager, up to the settlement and litigation.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Thank you, Frank, for joining me today and sharing your insights into using AI and analytics to make damages, rewards, just more clear, right? And figuring out the easier and quicker way forward for people in certain complicated, very, very time-consuming and emotionally draining situations.
More timely, consistent, and fair.
Right. Amen. All right. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Tim. Bye-bye.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.